topic of that as well. Hey guys, this is Savannah of earthandwater.co, and today I am with a guest, Alyssa Lilly she is a cyclical embodiment coach, which I just think is super cool. And we were talking right before we hit record about it's hard to, what's the word, box yourself, right? Because when you get into this online world of marketing and trying to, get your services out there, because a lot of us have the intentions of helping people, but trying to explain how we do that can be a little challenging, especially since nothing is boxable. Everything's a spectrum, which I'm sure that we'll get on the topic of as well. But I love that you landed on cyclical embodiment, because I talk a lot about cyclical living, which goes hand in hand with intentional living and purposeful living. And essentially it's noticing the cycles of life, of your body, and how it all fits together, right? Because we, as a society and culture, we've really disconnected ourselves from nature and everything that makes us who we are. And I think we're all just, for one, we have historically ached for this type of syncing up, but we didn't even understand that that's what we were aching for. We just knew that something was missing, right? And a lot of us have found that syncing our lives to our cycle, the phases of the moon, the seasons, seasonal eating, everything's always up and down. It's waves, right? And we do ourselves a lot of disjustice by trying to find consistency in a world that's not consistent. But it is consistent if you pay attention to these cycles and you start working with them, instead of like, oh, why am I was doing so good, I was productive for like 2 whole weeks and now I've fallen off. Well, that's just the natural cycles of things, and we have to give ourselves some leeway.
Yeah, it's the ebbs and flows. And just a gentle, loving reminder that my pronouns are they, them. But yes, cyclical living is such an adjustment. And I think we naturally used to do it and didn't even think about it. And then we've been, patriarchy came in and took over. And all of this health and wellness and idea of what that looks like in our society is productivity all the time. It is 24-hour repeat, right? You eat the same thing every day. You do the same workout every day. And the AFAB, assigned female at birth body, is not designed like that. We are designed for routine, but it's a monthly routine, a 28 to 35 day routine. Whether you have a cycle or not, you have to follow those ebbs and flows to really achieve what wellness looks like for you and your uniqueness. And it's so different for each of us too. It's so fascinating. And so you really have to tap into your intuition and your internal wisdom, which we're taught not to, right? We're taught to go to the doctor and constantly look for the external things. And what we really need to do is look in and say, what do I need right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody wants to condense everything to, like if they do know about cycles, they want to condense it into a shorter period of time than what nature works with. Nature works with big cycles, a whole month rather than a whole week. And we cycle through all of these things. I always tell people, because, they want to throw in short-term fixes, quick fixes, and they don't work. They diet, and then we do that for a while and we wonder why it doesn't work in the long term. And it's like, well, because long-term goals is what we need to be focusing more of, space everything out a little bit, slow everything down. I have
Well,
trouble.
and balance things, right? I feel like with the diet culture, it's I have to be on this diet. And if I mess up, I've fallen off the wagon. Then you go in the shame spiral. And then it's I'll restart my diet again on Monday. I'll restart it again next week. I'll restart it again at the new year. And by that time, you could have had a balanced ebb and flow of like, I'm eating for my heart today. Awesome. And then the next day, okay, I'm eating this for my body, and being okay with that and getting out of this mentality of like all or nothing. I don't understand.
Yes, all or nothing is something that plagues us as a society. Again, it's the boxes, right? The all box or the nothing box. Which is it? Well, it's in between. Everything's in between.
My needs change every day, and that's okay.
Yes. Um, Backing up a little bit, did I misgender you in the beginning?
You did. That's
I'm
okay.
so
I
sorry.
know it's a transition of just societal like boxes that we're trained with. I've misgendered myself talking to my kids sometimes because you don't realize when you're a parent how much you talk about yourself in the third person.
Right.
And so when I do it, I'm like, oh, I just misgendered myself. So it's literally a relearning because society doesn't really use they them pronouns for singular people very often.
Yeah, and I knew coming into it, and
Yeah.
I mentioned I've been so excited to talk to you, but also so incredibly nervous to talk to you because all of this, it's controversial.
It's very controversial and it shouldn't be. I feel like it's this like political fire for whatever reason. And it's just, we're just existing. And I also think there's a fear that comes around from people because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing and there being such a visceral reaction. And when you're speaking to a community that has been beaten down and hated for so long, it's normal to have that anger reaction. But for me, I come from a space of like, we're learning together. And as long as you're putting in the effort, I can tell. I can tell when somebody misgenders me to be mean and intentional, and I can tell when it's an accident. And so can everyone else who is gender nonconforming.
Well, good, because I've been concerned about that myself. I always have prided myself in being a safe place for everyone. And like
I'll be a safe place for you. You can ask all the questions. I'm here
well,
for it.
great, because I would love to talk about this. And that's another thing that I've been nervous about because I knew I have had my own I've had my own struggles with self-identity for a lot of reasons, a lot of things. Being a woman in a patriarchal world has its complications in a lot of directions. And then I was raised in the Bible Belt in the South on top of that. So like that had a lot of problems that was piled on top of.
Oh, the religious trauma.
Oh gosh, I could talk about some religious trauma for sure. Yeah, so diving just straight in, I was always told everything about being a female was always painted in a negative connotation.
Mhm.
You hit like a girl, you throw like a girl, don't scream like a girl, like, and so,
Your
and
cycle is gross. Your body is disgusting. Yeah.
yeah, don't talk about it. Like, oh my gosh. So my angle on my podcast, on my blog, on everything I do is healing. That's the angle. We're healing ourselves in order to try and make a little bit of a dent in healing the world. And that covers such a broad amount of topics because you have not only physical health, but emotional, mental health, and then you have sexual health, which we are all trying to figure out, especially in this Western culture that was built on like from Puritans. It's hard. So and then you have like community health and family health, like
There's so
relationship health.
much. Yeah.
There's so much. We could go on forever. And we're all trying to figure all of it out together, right? And that's where we need to remember that you're learning, I'm learning, we're all learning all the time. We should be always learning. We should always be the student. And I get really upset when people try to give me their half-baked opinions on things. Like I'm a researcher. I read books, I read things, and like I'm ADHD, so like I hyper focus on certain topics and I will read, and then I'll go on the spiel to somebody like my husband, and then he'll be like, well, my opinion is, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yep.
Based on your absolutely no research and nothing, based on nothing. You're pulling this out of your ass. All right, let's go. What is it?
But that's celebrated, right? Like, how many times in school did you write a full paper just out of your ass the night before and got an A on it? It's so
Absolutely.
celebrated to just like BS your way through things.
That's accurate as well, for sure. Yeah, so okay, so yeah, I grew up with being a girl was bad. Why? I don't know. It just was. And then I didn't have a positive female relationship in my life really, besides my grandmother, until my daughter was born. And then so I had suppressed everything feminine about me in an effort to prove myself as good as the boys, because we're taught that, well, if everything feminine is painted in this bad picture, then I guess we're supposed to be more masculine, right? And so I thought I was a tomboy. And then my daughter was born, and turns out I'm actually really girly and didn't know. But then I have not only this masculine energy that I've cultivated as like a survival mechanism, but also I just have a lot of masculine energy. I'm very focused, I'm very productive, very, a lot of these masculine qualities. And then I started learning about the law of gender, which a lot of people have problems with it being called the law of gender, because it's really about the yin and yang energy,
Mhm.
and how we all have yin energy and yang energy within us to varying degrees. We're all, everything is a spectrum. Literally everything is a spectrum. Literally everybody falls on that spectrum somewhere. And then but language, which I can also talk about for ages, because I'm fascinated by languages, and how, there's over 7,000 languages in the world, and our language creates our reality and our belief system and how we interact with the world and how we see the world. And that's why you have so many different cultures that are so vastly different. And when we have over 7,000 words that mean chair, people get really hung up on the words. And you can't, communication and understanding transition, it goes past words. Words should be like third at least, because you have energy and body language and intention and
I was
all
going
of
to say
that.
there's so many different ways to express yourself than other than just words.
Yes, and people want to get hung up on words. And in on one hand, yeah, words are important. Words are how we create our world. Words are how we break down societal barriers by talking about these things and whatnot. Um, but I don't know if you've ever tried to communicate and interact with someone who didn't speak your language very well.
Yes.
Yeah, and and that's where a lot of this comes from, is my own I always navigated more towards the minorities when I was growing up, because they were the safe place.
Mhm. It's
I
true.
was it is true. I was bullied really bad by like the vast majority category of people, which so I just naturally reclused backwards towards minorities, because they were the safe place, because they were also going through essentially bullying from a bigger scale for sure. But yeah, so words, and you have to find that communication that's in between the words, the intention behind the
Yeah.
words.
Well, and I feel like we've lost the thinking before you speak aspect, and we forget how powerful words are. Like taking a moment to pause and as you're going throughout your day and noticing how many times you say something negative about yourself or about what you're doing or how you're not going to be good at it or how much you apologize for existing. And once you start to pause and notice it and then intentionally transition that languaging to something more affirmative, it's powerful and it boosts your confidence. And it's something so small and it literally rewires your brain. So freaking powerful. I mean, that's why affirmations are so powerful. Now, I think that again, that's something where we get lost as well, as we get stuck in these affirmations of I love myself, which is great, but not everybody starts there. So
Mhm.
how do you create realistic affirmations for yourself to build up to that point of love?
Yes, the Absolutely. I agree with all of that. The thinking before you speak is definitely something that a lot of people still need to work on a
A
little
lot of people.
bit.
Have you been on the internet? Yes, a lot of people need to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I struggle with it myself from the opposite standpoint that I totally, failed in the beginning of this conversation, but um I
Let's
think
rephrase that. I don't know if failed is strong, right? We just had to pivot a little bit. You had a lesson, a learning, right? It's
sure.
beautiful.
Well, we can go back to language too with how failed has a negative connotation. But if you're in business, if you're in like the growth mindset world, they're like, no,
Fail is
failing is
good.
great.
Hell
Failing is
yeah.
good. I failed. Yeah. Because you learn more by failing than you do by succeeding. So,
It's true.
it's everything's a spectrum of both.
Mm.
But yes, stepping stones with the affirmations, becoming aware, because awareness, hyper awareness is really the only thing any of us can hope for anything. That's the goal.
Well, and I feel like that awareness is what puts us between our soul and the gosh, I'm trying to find the words for it. I feel like our intuition is the language between our soul and our body. And so having that awareness kind of puts us in between those two places to help us figure ourselves out. Because being a soul and a body is so strange.
It is.
And especially coming from the perspective of my body doesn't necessarily match how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a weird and foreign place to be. And so building that bridge and that relationship of communication, even with yourself, is so difficult. And then when you try to express it to the outside world where it's not accepted or gets jumbled because language fails us and people forget, like you said, to see the physical language that's happening, not necessarily spoken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, language is so limiting for the vast array that we have available to us from an energetic standpoint. Because you're right, we are trying to interpret, trying to bridge the gap between, because we're all a product of our environment until we learn enough to transition into being whatever we want,
Mhm.
because we're all stuck in these societal and cultural norms, and we're raised in them and we're marinated in them, and until we like
Marinated in the expectations of everyone else.
everyone else, and it's so crushing to your soul, to your spirit, who is like, hey, you're so much bigger than this, you're so much more than this, why are you boxing yourself, you're so unboxable. And yeah, creating that bridge to where uh people, society be like, it's, you're throwing it in her face. Like, no, man, I'm just trying to figure it out myself.
I just want to
And
live my life.
I'm
Like,
just
what?
going,
Let me be in my happy place. Thank you.
yeah.
Mm.
So how did you get to this point? Like, did you always know? Did you all like, was there a transitional
Oh my
period? Was there
goodness.
like a, oh my gosh, what moment, or
Are you talking about as far as they, them, or just where I am today?
whichever you want?
All of it, all of the above. I feel like I feel like I've lived many lifetimes in this one lifetime. I won't go into super detail because I don't want to trigger anyone, but I have a past of foster care and all of the different kinds of abuse and I don't talk to my own family. And so for me, I was stuck in survival mode for so long that I didn't have time to reflect on who I am or what I want. It was, how do I survive? I was working and living on my own at 16 while I was in high school. And literally until recently have been working multiple jobs my whole life. And I just never had that safe space to pause and be like, oh, this isn't what I want. So I actually didn't come out as non-binary or realize that was a reality for me or have the languaging around it until I was in my late 20s. And that's a lot of unpacking to
Yeah.
do. So I feel like for me, it's just this journey of peeling back all of the expectations of society, peeling back all of the trauma, and finally seeing, oh, there I am in there. I found it. And just leaning more into that.
Yeah, a lot of it I've noticed is, it's the spiral.
Mhm.
The more you peel back, the more you uncover, the more you realize that turns out I'm pretty sure I knew this about myself like a long time ago. And people kept telling me that it was this instead of that. So I just like, okay, I
Or
guess.
telling you that it's not okay. Like I know
Oh,
so many artists that are very successful, but when they were a kid, all they heard was, you're never going to be successful. You can't make a living at that, constantly tore down. Or even being business owners. I don't know if you've ever had this encounter, but I've had the encounter talking to family where they ask me what I do and what my prices are. And I talk about it and they're like, oh, who would pay for that? Who would pay that much money for that? And it's like, ooh, ooh, we
yes.
need to work on that.
Absolutely 100% on all of that. I was definitely, man, I get kind of upset sometimes because I'm a writer and I've always been a writer. But I was told so many times that because poetry is what I started out writing. And well, artists don't make money until they're dead. That's not a real job. That's all fine and dandy for you to hobby at. But what it actually is your plan? And if I had been supported and we had cultivated that talent from a young age, I feel like I would be so much further in my writing career now. I could have specialized, I could have went to college and specialized in that instead of what I did specialize in because, that wasn't a real gig. And then here I am, you know, 20 years later, and I haven't been able to get away from it. It's always been I can't not do it.
Isn't it funny how our curiosities lead us down this beautiful trail? And like you said, if we were taught to follow that trail at a younger age and supported in that curiosity, gosh, we would be so much further in life. But that's where we get to do better, right? So for my kids, we get to create that environment for them of, you want to do this, let's do it. And maybe it won't work out, maybe you'll change your mind later, but right now in this moment, if that's where your curiosity is taking you, let's follow it. And I'm actually we're getting to the age where we're going to start homeschooling and different things. And I love I've been researching, I forgot the name of it, but it's the type of homeschooling where you follow their interests versus trying to say again.
Unschooling.
Unschooling, that's what I should remember, that unschooling. And it's so beautiful because my son is autistic and nonverbal, and he has started getting obsessed with these books, Pete the Cat and No David, I think, is the other one. And he has them memorized and is reading page by page. So we started working on sounds and alphabet and different things from within this book. And the other day I was playing Legend of Zelda and I died. And I've never read the game over screen out loud. And my son, 4 years old, pops over and goes, "Game over, continue." And I was like, what? And so by following that curiosity, he's been able to excel in reading far beyond what I could ever imagine. And I don't know, if we just grew up like that our entire life, where would we be today? Magical fucking beings beyond imagination.
Oh my gosh, especially like, and I don't want to be like, especially me and you, but because that's not true. We're no different than any other person out here trying to do anything. It just so happens
Mhm.
that me and you landed in the spotlight a little bit.
Yeah.
So, so people are seeing us do more than they see other people do. And, but yeah, just imagine where we could be. Yeah, no, my daughter yesterday was, I don't know, she was bouncing around the living room semi upset but like happy upset, just like her gears were running and she was like, oh, I can't do all of this. I can't. What am I supposed to focus on? I can't be a ballerina and this and that. And like I was like, I know it's so hard trying to figure out which direction you want to go, isn't it? But I am here.
It's being a parent is so fun. Just being there as a guide as they navigate these big emotions and what is big decisions for them. It's so fun.
It is. I only ever wanted to be a mom, and then I became one, and wow, that
There
was
is no preparing for it. There is no conversation you could have had with me before kids that could have prepared me for having kids.
at all. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. You don't realize the stuff that you need to unpack and work through until you have.
Or that you'll be forced to unpack and work through. And you wonder why postpartum depression is such a big thing, because so much trauma and shit just comes up when you have kids, not because of the kid, but because of your inner kid that was not loved in a certain way or parented in a certain way, or maybe you don't know how to parent. And it's wild. And it's one of those things, it's sink or swim. You're either going to accelerate your healing or you're going to fall into that depression. And sometimes you go back and forth, and that's okay.
I definitely went back and forth.
Me
I
too.
definitely had a really hard time after I had my kids.
It's an identity crisis. You have to refigure out who the fuck you are.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And then society doesn't help, especially as, you know, we get into the gender norms and everything. Like parents and children, it's so backwards the way we've created our world for them, because they are the core of society and culture. The health of our future depends entirely upon how well we raise our children and how well we support our parents who are raising those children. Because, you know, how do we end up with a world that's so like damaged is because you have children who are then not given what they need to thrive and mature, and then they become adults, but they're not actually adults, they're still children in adults' bodies, and now they're responsible for making laws and those kind of things and deciding how we live. And yeah, so, and I say this almost every podcast because I'm hyper fixated on it. Children and their parents, like supporting them, is where most of our resources should go, because that's
And
how
it's
we.
not.
It's not. No, it's the last place they go in a lot
Oh,
of.
well, and I feel like as a parent, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, no matter what decision you make. Let's be real. None of us know what the fuck we're doing. There is no manual that works for every kid, because every kid is different. Every parenting situation is different. Every journey is different. So we're all just figuring it out as we go. And that's okay. And no matter how you choose to raise your kid, as long as their best interest is at heart, you're doing a great job. I just feel like that needed to be said, because it is, being a parent is hard, and no matter what you do, you're judged, especially if you have kids with ADHD, autism, or any type of neurodivergence to them. People don't understand. And I'm sure, I don't know your style of parenting, but we navigate big emotions. We don't tell them to shut up and be quiet because we're in a public space. Like, no, there's a big emotion going on. Let's sit with it. What's happening? What's going on? Do you want me to hold you? And letting them be loud for a minute. And that's okay.
It absolutely is. No, I agree completely, because I was always hushed, you know, as per the normal standard of parenting when we were growing up. Children were to be seen, not heard. And
Mm-hmm.
that did a number on me in a lot of ways. And I ended up shutting down to where I barely spoke from age like 7 to 23.
And it's wild. I've worked with so many people and clients and friends, and throat chakras being locked up because of these internalized stories of you're not allowed to speak up. You have to be quiet, especially if you're assigned female at birth. Like,
Mhm.
you're told to shut up and be quiet all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And then you know, being raised in Church of Christ.
That's a whole different, yeah.
Yeah. So it's deeply ingrained in us from a young age that uh girls especially, like all children are to be seen, not heard, but girls especially are
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to speak, are not allowed to voice their opinion, for sure not allowed to
Being a
lead.
lady is being quiet and
Yeah.
being polite and listening to what other people tell you, even if you don't agree.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wild. And then like for me, when I had my kids, my husband was a stay-at-home dad and I was working. And I remember getting so much shit for that. But uh, we got to a point where we were both working. And this weird expectation fell on me of, well, why aren't you doing more for the kids? Why aren't you spending more time with the kids? You work too much. I'm like, my husband works just as much as I do. Why don't you give him some shit, please. Thank you.
Mhm.
But I mean, also we're doing what we can and we're supporting our children. And I don't know, it's such a weird minefield because I went from being the working parent and being thrown in a closet with boxes to pump because they didn't have a proper pump room
Yep.
to only having a week off technically for a C-section. And I had to use my PTO to take time off to be with my baby to having two full-time working parents. And now, I mean, yes, I work full-time, but it's at home and I get to be with my kids. So I get to be more in that maternal kind of societal box, but it's still so strange to think about those boxes. Even with me being at home and my husband working all the time, he still does things that are more motherly and I do things that are more fatherly and vice versa. And it's like, oh, I don't even understand these boxes that have been placed. They're not even realistic for the society that we live in right now.
Right, because it takes everybody pitching in, and it always has, but I suppose it was easier there for like that 50-year period where it was easy to not
Well,
have.
I feel like for a while society was designed and our I can't think of our ecosystem was designed to where one income could support a family, and that's just not realistic. People are having to get roommates and families are having to live together, and that's just how it has to be right now, just with how expensive everything is.
Absolutely. We have my brother-in-law lives with us, and
Mhm.
then my best friend has lived with us on and off for years. And yeah, it's just nobody can afford to do it all by themselves,
Mhm.
especially
Or
when
you
you're
lose
in
your mind like I did trying to do it. I had, my husband was working full time and I had three jobs, one of them being my own business, and we burn ourselves the fuck out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's real easy to do.
Yeah.
I
But
struggle.
celebrated because you're awesome if you can do that, right? You're awesome if you can work all the time.
Yeah, but like glorifying the hustle.
That's what I mean.
No,
It is
no.
all air quote sarcasm. Don't glorify it.
Oh,
Glorify self care.
yes. No, man, I get so tired because I'm definitely I actually had somebody the other day. Well, so I teach yoga in real life. Because
In
I
real life.
in real life, not on the internet. I teach a little bit on
I
the
was
internet.
like, you do teach on the internet. I watch your videos all the time.
I do, but not I've only just now started getting into the physical aspects of yoga. It's a whole thing,
Oh,
'cause
I will say, I love when I'm scrolling through TikTok, you're like, all right, sit the fuck down. We're doing this 5 minutes or 1 minute, give it to me. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm here for it.
awesome. I love it. Yes, because it took me a really long time. Hindsight's 2020, especially when you're ADHD. It's like you think all of these things connect, but and they do, but you're not translating them in a way that they connect. So yeah. But I only just started getting into the physical aspects of yoga because the philosophy and the mental emotional stuff, the healing trauma stuff, the meditation stuff, that's what kept me here. And that's
Mhm.
what I've clung to. And like the physical aspects, although incredibly important, I'm only just now the past like 3 years really getting in touch with the physical aspects of yoga. Up until that point, I was like, what do you just sit on the floor and stretch? Why do you need me to just instruct you on how to do that? Like, just
Intuitive yoga is a beautiful thing, though. That's what that is. I don't even think you realize you were doing
yeah, no,
it.
intuitive is exactly what it is. And so I was on, I don't know, I was bored with it. I didn't want to sit there and tell you how to stretch. So most of my platform has been towards the meditation aspects and the philosophical terms and like learning the deeper things.
So you know what's funny about this because you actually talked about this earlier too, and I think it's this idea, especially in the spiritual world, when you talked about yin and yang and masculine and feminine energy, is we are trying to put these concepts into boxes and separate them. Like especially, I don't know, I feel like in the spiritual community it's hyper feminized. You need to be super hyper
Yes.
feminine and get into these feminine practices. But what happened to being a whole being and seeing what these energies look like when they're together and as one essence, instead of swinging far one way or far the other? It's finding that balance on that spectrum, like you said, of where you kind of lie and where that energy balance feels really good for you, instead of trying to look at them as two separate entities. They're one. And so hearing you talk about the way that you look at yoga, it's like you were super masculine and now you're like, oh, we need, or vice versa. It's like you were in one energy of it, but didn't know how to get the other one and to translate them together. But I love seeing you kind of morph and starting to put it as a whole, because I feel like that's balancing and alchemizing your energy. And it's really magical.
It is. But even then, when you think about it, even though my practice was very yin, very feminine, um, everything else about me was masculine,
Mhm.
because I had suppressed everything feminine in the like society culture, how I lived my life, how I dressed. I wouldn't be caught dead in pink. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now it's one of the main colors I wear just because I finally figured out that it works well with my complexion. But but yeah, it's the balancing act that I was so about the physical movements and the asanas of yoga, and I was just hyper fixated on the spirituality, the energy, the flowy philosophy, creativity. But that was balancing out the other aspects of my life. And now that I'm finding balance in whom I am, like on the outside, it's coming into the balance on the inside as well. Because, uh, the law of correspondence, the inside reflects the outside, as above so below. It's all a reflection. So you're going to find that balance kind of whether you want to or not, in ways that you don't expect, until you can kind of stitch it together as a whole. Because you're right, we are all a whole. And that's why healing is a big subject, and so we section it off into different categories and work on one category at a time.
Even though we
But
get that hyper focus and we forget the bigger picture.
yes, yes, I tell people all the time, you can heal the exact same issue from a physical standpoint with like diet and exercise, or you can heal it from this standpoint of meditation and self-reflection. It works better when you do it all together, but yeah, we all come at it from different directions because it's really hard for us to wrap our heads around being a whole individual. Like, it's not a new concept, but it's uh getting more commonly understood that we're whole individuals, and that the mind reflects the body and the body reflects the mind. It's all tied together. Stress, for example, is a big source of physical sickness, and so it's mental, but it's also physical. Emotions, when you get to the nitty gritty of it, are just chemicals in our body. That's physical, and those cause issues if they're
Not
not.
addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking from personal experience, I'm navigating a back injury right now that has been aggravated by working three jobs and being overly stressed and not taking the time to listen and see what's going on and check in. So, yes. And I always love to explain to people like this: if you don't understand the mind body connection, think about what happens when you are stressed at your job. Your shoulders tense, your neck gets tense, you get knots in your back, you feel uncomfortable in your body, or you have carpal tunnel issues if you work at a desk all the time because you're sitting in that one position and you're stressed and frequently typing. Like, that's all ways that your emotions are corresponding to what's being expressed in your body.
Absolutely. I always tell my students that because anxiety is how my platform started. I built my whole platform on trying to figure out how to fix my own anxiety issues and my own confidence and self-esteem issues. And so my yoga practice has really specialized in helping people with anxiety. and stress management. And I tell them all the time that, our minds run rampant like a puppy that needs to be trained, chewing on things, destroying things, just absolutely crazy. And so meditation helps us train our puppy. But also,
I like puppy. I've never heard it related to a puppy. This is a cute image.
no, it translates across all of the things, because you also need to pat your puppy on the head every now and then, like, and give it food and water and
What wild.
pet it, like, just love your puppy. Yeah. And if you can equate it to that a little bit better, people can equate it to, people like dogs more than they like people or themselves, so it connects a little bit better. But uh getting back to the physical practice, I tell them that it's a lot easier. Our mind and body are connected, and it's a lot easier to tell your shoulders to go back and down, open up the chest. Like, it's easier to move your hand than it is to tell your mind that you chill out.
Yeah.
So if you can do all these body mechanisms that naturally calm the nervous system, if you can convince your body that you're calm and not stressed out, the mind will follow suit. The mind will be like, oh, are we, I thought we were panicking. Are you sure we're not panicking? Oh, we're regulating our breath. Well, that doesn't feel like panic. Well, okay, I guess we're not panicking then.
Transitioning our nervous system from the fight or flight to the rest, digest, and heal. That, yes, physically move your body, remind your body that you're safe, and your mind will follow. I love that so much.
Yeah, because that's something I struggled heavily with, was anxiety. I was just, and even these days, like, which I could do a whole I have done several podcast episodes on this, just this topic, so I could talk about it for ages.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I think the biggest thing is the the things that enhance our anxiety are things that are celebrated, and the things that move us into that rest, digest, and heal mode in our nervous system is looked down upon. You
Yes,
can't, you're selfish. You spend too much time on yourself. You shouldn't take that
lazy.
time meditating. You need to give to someone else. And it just exacerbates it. It makes it so much worse.
It does. And we're all healing as a society, as a whole, as a culture, because there's no separation between me and you, between us and our children. Like, we're all, as we parent them, we're parenting ourselves, because, or like we should be, those of us who are trying to actively heal anyway.
No, I think everyone is, whether you're good parenting yourself or not.
Okay, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Yes.
Yes.
That,
Let's not repeat the trauma cycles, guys. Let's not repeat the trauma cycles.
oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so frustrating. Part of the reason I started my podcast was because it was so hard to find meaningful, healing, stimulating conversation with the people around me. I think and it's getting better. I've been talking a lot lately about how we can't blame those who came before us, because most of them were doing the best that they could with the resources they had available, which were incredibly limited because the internet didn't exist. And like, should they have just been a nicer, more patient person? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But you also have to, like, look at the world that they grew up in and were marinated in, it doesn't exist anymore. And thank God for the internet, because man, has that saved my life and everything.
More
Just,
than once.
oh gosh, yes. So, we finally have the resources available to learn that, whoa, mental health is a thing. What do you mean mental health is a thing? I've been telling you that I was anxious and depressed my whole life. I mean, yeah, but everybody's anxious and depressed. Just suck it up.
Oh, that irks me more than anything. I hate it. Suck it up. That's a big one. Or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yep. Yep.
I choose not to be that parent. Again,
Actually, so true.
it's one of those things. It's hard too when you think about it the way that you're thinking of. You need to understand what they're going through and the position that they're in, that they were in. Especially coming from a history of abuse, it's like I see that, and I still get to hold them accountable, and I'm still allowed to be angry. So just a reminder of, yes, you can have that compassion and you can see the bigger picture, but you're also allowed to still be angry and hold that person responsible for their actions, because push comes to shove, they still chose
Yep.
to repeat the cycle. They had that choice, just like you do.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, um, should they should they have just been a nicer person? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They could have made some better decisions for sure. Um, but yeah, seeing the bigger picture is part of the healing process for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, you can still hold them accountable and be angry and choose to distance yourself from them, um, but not hold it within you. And we come back to the word thing, the language thing, because the word forgiveness, people think that, oh, like I gotta forgive and forget. Nope, nope, nope. Remember, definitely
Mhm.
remember. Um, Even tell them about it, but you can't let the toxicity that it gave you stay within you.
Well, and I also think we confuse forgiveness with release, right?
There you
Because
go.
I don't think you necessarily have to forgive someone that hurt you. Can you? Yes. Should you? Up to you. But releasing the impact and cutting that cord with them, if I'm not letting this impact me anymore. Or when you look at forgiveness, looking at self forgiveness, especially with trauma, of a lot of times when you've been abused, you abuse other people and relationships around you as you're growing up and trying to figure out how to live a normal life. So maybe reflecting and doing self forgiveness while releasing that person that hurt you.
I like that. Yeah. Like I said, that I knew forgiveness wasn't, it's not quite.
Words are hard. They
Words are
really
so
are.
hard. Yeah, I agree completely. And this is why we have podcasts and talk about it out loud, because it helps us find new words and new ways of explaining things. And from there, we can weave a better world for us all. Yeah, releasing it, the energy, because, yeah,
I have a cup that says, let that shit go. Anytime I'm having a hard time stewing on something, I pour me a nice glass of wine in my let the shit go cup, and I sit with it for a minute and let it go.
I love that. I have a hard time letting things go a lot of time. Like I don't hold grudges like at all. I have an everybody meter is what I tell them, so you can every bad interaction I have with you, like it fills up your meter a little bit. We
I
get to
love
the
this.
top. When your meter is full, I am done with you. But that does not mean that you can't fix it. Like I said, I don't hold grudges. I hold boundaries. And I am willing to give you a certain amount, once you can fill up your meter, I'll take a certain amount. But once we hit that point, like you're gonna have to, if
I
you
need
want.
you to give a little. I've done enough. You need to give a little at that point. No, I feel that completely. I think we need to normalize those conversations too, and boundaries and relationships and friendships, of like, it shouldn't be one person putting in everything, but also the expectation should be there of like, hey, I want you to give this. I want this to be our friendship. Is that the same thing that you want? No. Okay, well, then maybe I need to find someone else to be friends with or have a relationship with. But yes, I love the meter. That is so accurate.
Communication is so important, and it's something that we all struggle with, I think, these days. And especially when so many people are so quick to anger. And, most, if not all, of that is miscommunication, usually. Um,
It
it's,
is. It's your boundaries have been crossed, whether it is with yourself or someone else has crossed it and you're angry, but you're not paying attention to why you're angry.
yeah, you think it's because they did this or they said that. And it's like, well, but why did that cause such a strong reaction in you? Oh, because when you were 12, this happened. And
Surprise.
it's a pattern that's continued to repeat. And yeah, you're frustrated that here it is again, but you have to acknowledge that it's the pattern that comes from this hurt, and this person just activated it, and they have no idea that they activated it. You have to tell them, and you have
Yeah.
that's where the meditation comes in, because meditation is helping us take a step back and think about things before we react, the respond instead of react.
Mm-hmm.
And then but none of us are perfect at it. Let me throw that out there too.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I still react sometimes.
Yes. I tell people all the time, when my brother-in-law moved in with us, because people look at me as a yoga instructor and a spiritual person and all of that, that I'm supposed to be all zen and om all the time. And they don't understand that I got here because I had anger issues. You end up engulfing yourself in the thing that you need to learn and instill the most in yourself, right? And like from them, because he had some anger issues, and like as soon as he moved in with us, I was warning him at every turn. I was like, look, there's a side of me that's not good. um
I have an angry goblin inside of me that likes to come out, and we just need to be okay with it.
yeah, I always call it my Jin Cherokee. I don't know if
Oh
you're
my gosh, I love
familiar
it.
with Naruto.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, I have a Jin Cherokee, and I keep them tamed most of the time, but sometimes I slip because I'm human, and
And sometimes they just need to come out to play. Have you ever been to a rage room
no, but I know.
or done any type of rage ritual?
Well, I took jujitsu for a little while. That could be considered a different
Yes.
arts.
Let me tell you my favorite thing to do, and this will be good for you and anyone listening. I love getting geodes, especially Moroccan geodes. I love hearing them shake. And I love listening to really super fucking angry music. Again, make sure you're being safe because you're gonna break things. And holding the geode and channeling, thinking of whatever is making me angry and channeling it all into it, and then just freaking breaking the shit out of it is the most, I don't know. It just brings so much joy. It's funny how that anger, after you start getting into it, you have so much joy in releasing it. I don't know.
And then you have the joy of a crystal at the end.
Yes, I have them in my plants from different rituals that I've done.
It's very symbolic. I love it. Yeah. No, I warn people all day long. I'm like, yo, I have this side of me that I am still working on, because we all have that. You try your best to heal the trauma and do better and be better, but life just tests you and throws things at you. And if you're trying to do anything, like be a parent and run a business and then meet society standards, but also figure out who you are and try to be happy with that, and then heal all the trauma in between, it's a lot. And sometimes it gets too much, and sometimes our Jin Cherokees get let loose. And don't you know, they're always still surprised when it happens.
Well, it's because you were using the example of you being a yoga teacher, right? It's because when that comes out, you're not living in their perception of who you should be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And anger is so frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's a good sign. Let the anger come out. Fucking celebrate it. You
And
should get angry more often.
thank you. And that's what I try to tell him. It's an energy release. Sometimes I have a big personality. I I don't want to be like, I can't help it, because I did help it for a long time, for like 20 something years.
And you shouldn't have to hold it back. Have your big personality.
I shouldn't have to. I told my husband not too long ago, because I had an outburst. I did. And plus we run into the where I'm ADHD, and we have trouble regulating our emotions anyway. And then I might be mildly autistic. We don't know for a
I'm
fact.
autistic, so
Okay,
I get
cool.
it. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a whole thing in and of itself. The first time I went to I was talking to my mom and my sister, and we were talking about something, and I was like, I don't know. I've been going back and forth. I'm not sure, but I think I might be mildly autistic. Both of them, without missing a beat, were like, yes. Like, okay.
All right. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like I always knew that I was neurodivergent. I just didn't know what flavor for the longest time. So yeah, I have emotional regulation challenges.
Good choice in words. I love
Thank
that.
you. I searched hard there. A couple of other ones were trying to come out, and I was like, mm-mm. But yeah, I have emotional regulation challenges. My son also has these, and that's how I figured it out about myself, is that he's me made over 100%, and me observing him gave me kind of like an outsider's outlook on myself. And I
Same. How I found my autism was through my son.
cool, yeah. So, and people, that has such a negative connotation. Like even my husband, I mentioned it not too long ago because I don't use it as an excuse, but I also I want people to know that it's not me just being an asshole. I'm
It's not an
struggling.
excuse. You're allowed to have accommodations and needs that are different from other people.
Yeah, but because it is mild, and I don't know, have gotten really good at masking my whole life, that there's this disconnect where people don't give me much leadway. I just have to be perfect all the time, and man, that gets hard and exhausting and challenging. And it's even more so the fact that I have put myself in the spotlight as like a leader in these senses. And so the first slip up I have, because it's not only how my brain is wired, but like outside complications that everybody deal with are a little bit more louder for me. Sensory processing is a big trigger for me. If there's too many noises.
Oh, can't do it. I can't hold a conversation in a restaurant. People get so frustrated with me. I'm like, I literally hear everyone talking at once and I cannot process what you're telling me.
Yeah. Yeah, too many forks. Can't do it. Sorry. And my neurotypical husband sometimes just can't cope with me. He's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, I know you don't get it. And gosh, I wish that you could experience this for just a day. Just a day. I wouldn't wish it on you forever.
Just a day to understand. Yeah.
But it's a gift and a curse in a lot of ways. Um, but yeah, if I have the
In there.
slightest slip up as a spiritual leader, it's like all of a sudden everybody else thinks that they have a pass to just act however they want to act. Like, oh, well, Savannah let it go out the window, so we're throwing it all at the window too. And oh man, that's frustrating. And I cry about it, and I'm like, but I need y'all to help me. Like, y'all can't y'all can't act out just because I'm acting out. Okay. I understand that I'm acting out, and I've apologized for it 3 times. Can we go back to how it was before? I need y'all to help me keep my own stability, which also is not fair to ask of them, but
Well, I do think that's a reflection for them because they're putting so much on you for their own wellness,
oh my
right?
gosh, yes.
If you're going to go crazy, I get to go crazy and you're not crazy. I hate that word. I don't know why that's what came out of my mouth, but that gives me permission to stop doing all of these things and just to explode. And that's not dependent on you. That's their choice.
Yeah,
And it's a reflection for sure.
absolutely. And it's just hard. Life is hard.
Life is hard. And I think it's funny because this like idea of a healed person is life is all flowers and dandelions and frolicking. And it's not. It's acknowledging that life is hard and knowing the tools that support you through the shit that life throws at you. I hope it's okay to cuss at your podcast. I didn't even ask.
No,
What do you
yeah,
think
yeah,
about that? Okay.
yeah. Um, yeah, there's a middle ground. It's the balance of the spectrum, right?
Yep.
Everybody, I teach that a lot in my classes too, because people want to be at one extreme or the other. They think of they grasp at the big awesome emotions like joy and excitement, and it's chasing the dopamine or whatever. And you got to kind of like be comfortable hanging out in the middle. you know? And
That, and I think understanding how they're connected too, because I feel like anxiety, for example, can be excitement. When something exciting is happening, you're anxious for it because it's coming up and you're waiting for it. And so many times emotions are so interlocked, or anger and joy. When I was talking about releasing anger, how much joy I felt, there's a connection there, and understanding that, like you said, that spectrum of where that falls and the connection between the two and how to pivot when those situations are happening.
exactly. You get stuck down here at the bottom of the spectrum with the hate and the sadness and the depression, and the longer you're there, the harder it is to get yourself out of it. As I tell people, if you've been traveling north for years, it's gonna take a little bit of backtracking. It's gonna take a lot of backtracking to start going south, or just as an analogy. But absolutely, having these tools that you can pull out, and because it's a practice. That's another thing. It's a practice. So like people be like, I tried affirmations, it didn't work for me. Did you try
Yeah. Did you really commit? And also knowing these tools and having them in your pocket, because what you need is going to change. And
them?
so I find a lot of ways that I used to enjoy self-care. An example would be bubble baths. I used to love doing bubble baths, which is traditional idea of what self-care is. But now with my chronic pain, and I'm not able to get on the floor like that, and it's a whole thing. And also I have kids and they'll want to jump in the tub with me. And it's just not a realistic self-care for me. So just understanding that, one, is it working for you? And if it's not, maybe it'll work for you later. Maybe now is not the time for it. But affirmations are a big one. They do work. Practice them. Find ones that work for you. Write your own affirmations.
Yeah, being flexible in your tools for
Mhm.
sure. Because again, consistency doesn't look as consistent as people think it should, and they get really discouraged. But you have to remember that everything, like, things will work until they don't, and they're eventually always going to not, because you're going to have another wrench thrown into your life. Things are going to mess up your routine. Things are going to, people are going to get sick, and you're going to lose people that you love. It's just a part of life. And knowing that when you fall off from the things that are working from you, or they stop working for you, that doesn't mean that you have to fall into this despair of, oh no, I failed, or whatever you fall into. It just means that we have to pivot. We have to find something else. We have to like adjust a little bit, but be more flexible in what you're providing for yourself, or the space that you're giving yourself. You got to create space for yourself, for sure, to figure it out.
Why have we not talked sooner? I love chatting with you.
We tried.
I know that's true. We did. We did try. I meant not necessarily in a podcast format. Oh,
We can definitely do more episodes. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to do more episodes. Whatever you want. We can. I've always been a my platform is your platform type of person, as long as that we have the same goals. And what I mean by same goals is like just directional path. If it benefits the audience, then let's go for it. And
yeah. Hell yeah.
I think me and you definitely align in a lot of ways.
Well, and we've been following each other forever, haven't we? Because
Yeah,
I feel
it's
like
been a
I've
while.
seen your face forever, that it's surreal to be in this conversation right now of just watching how both of us have grown and expanded over time. It's beautiful.
It is. I love it. I'm not sure exactly when we hit the record button, but I think it's about an
It's been
hour.
been a little over an hour. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll wrap it up then. I have enjoyed this, absolutely. Please tell everybody where they can find you.
At the Alyssa Lilly, TheAlyssaLilly. So TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. And then my website is courageousembodiment.com.
I can tell that you have said that 1,000 times. It sounded like a song.
I have two podcasts. So yeah. But thank you.
Yeah. And I will definitely link all of that down below. Is there any kind of like little tidbit that you want to leave people with before we go?
Oh my gosh, that's a that's a big question.
It is.
Follow your curiosities. I feel like that would be the theme of this episode and what we've talked about. If there's anything you take away, believe in yourself and follow your curiosities.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, and I'll link all of that below. Namaste.